for everyone. So I'm going to be an awesome scripture, and as an honor and privilege to also present to you Emmaleecramer. She's going to just be sharing her heart for what it really means to her. And she asked me to read a scripture. It was in Romans 6, 16 to 18. Okay, and it says, "Do you know that when you offer yourselves to someone to obey him as slaves, you are slaves to whom you obey? Whether you are slaves to sin, which leads to death, or to obedience, which leads to righteousness. But thanks be to God that though you used to be slaves to sin, you wholeheartedly obeyed from the form of the teaching which you have been entrusted. You have been set free from sin and become slaves to righteousness." And I give you Emily.
Come on, Em!
Come on, princess. Hello. Okay, so Romans is honestly my favorite book in the whole Bible. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I always go back to it for everything. It was the book that I really studied out when I came back from leaving my Bible studies the first time. It really helped to strengthen my relationship with God and my faith in God. And what I really love most about this specific scripture is how it really reflects on the person that I was before I gave my life to Christ and the person that I am now because of him. Awesome. So what the cross means to me is really to obey. Now, BC Emily, she didn't know what obedience meant. She had no respect for authority, and everything was always about her. My dad, he told me this story once when I was a little girl. My mom, she would pick out all of my outfits for school in the morning, okay? And it was my dad's responsibility in the morning to make sure that I brushed my teeth, ate breakfast, and wear the specific outfit that my mom had picked out. But when my mom would come home the following day from work, she would see that I was wearing a completely different outfit. She was frustrated. She would ask my dad, "What happened? Why isn't she wearing the clothes that I had picked out for her?" And my dad, he said, "You don't know what she's like in the morning." I know, right? More recently, when I was in Italy this past August with my Aunt Natalie, we were in Milan just eating lunch, having a regular conversation, and she asked me, "Why have you decided to have a relationship with God?" And in short, I said, it began as a realization that how hard life was walking alone. And as I began to study the Bible, it then turned into realizing how lost I really was in the world. My aunt then said, "We could see how lost you were, but you were so headstrong that there was nothing we could do to help you."
Come on, Em.
Okay.
You got this, Em.
She then said, you can only guide a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. Now, I used to be the girl that would tell people how I didn't want to get married. I would tell people that I didn't want my husband to stray away from me when he found someone more beautiful and younger than I was as my youth faded. The feeling of not being enough and being more invisible than I already was my greatest fear. I would tell people that I didn't want kids because I didn't want to experience the after effects of what it would do to my body, to become even more insecure about my body than I already was. I would tell people that my 20s were meant to be free-spirited, to be living in the moment and not worrying about tomorrow because one day my youth would fade. And I wanted to make every moment count. I wanted to be different. I wanted to be different by partying, drinking alcohol, doing drugs, giving my mind and body to whoever wanted it that night. That's how I thought I I would set myself apart from everyone else. Little did I know how wrong I was. During this time of being a free-spirited hippie, I could feel God reaching out to me, telling me how I needed to stop or I would hurt myself even more than I already was. But because of my lack of respect for authority, I blatantly disobeyed and did what I wanted instead. I told myself, it's fine. I know my limits, and I know when to stop. I continued to listen to my own voice and heavily relied on my own understanding despite what God was trying to tell me.
Come on, Emily. Come on in.
Eventually, I met this boy, and I was head over heels for him. He was the first person that I was ever truly capable of not just giving my body to, but my heart and my soul. Yet God was still trying to reach out to me and tell me that this was the boy that would break my heart. But I ignored God, and eventually this boy did break my heart. But he didn't just...
Come on, Emily.
Come on, Em, you got this.
Come on, Emily.
Let it out, girl.
You got this.
He didn't just break my heart. It was the ultimate betrayal. A betrayal that I still have to deal with to this day.
Come on, Emily. Come on.
At that point, I wanted to kill myself. I hit rock bottom, you can say. I wanted out of the life that I had created for myself. I truly believe that God saw how helpless I was from my disobedience because he sent me a guardian angel that told me to pray. Pray to remove this person from my life when I didn't have the strength to do it on my own. So I did pray. I didn't just pray, I prayed my heart out. I begged to God. I was lying on the bathroom floor.
Come on, Emily.
Begging to God to take this person out of my life and take me out of the darkness and save me. And he did. A few years pass by and my life is different. I'm in a relationship, a toxic relationship, but hey, I'm not doing any more one night stands anymore. I'm not partying as much, but I needed out. Eventually, God continued to reach out to me, and he gave me the opportunity to really get to know him and learn his truth.
Wow.
And I learned how my truth, my free-spirited lifestyle was completely wrong. I also learned what it meant to be God's daughter and the cost that came with obedience.
Come on.
As much as I wanted God's love and grace, I wasn't fully ready to obey. I would tell God that my life is different now. I've come a long way. I'm a good person. Why can't I just have both? I would constantly ask God to let me fight for his salvation rather than my own.
Come on.
And instead of simply putting my faith in God and obeying his word, I put my faith in people. And we all know what happens when we put our faith in people.
Yeah.
They can only fulfill your needs so much before they have to fulfill their own.
That's right.
And in the end of it all, I was betrayed, abandoned, and heartbroken. And the one person that was there through every high and low was God. With all the shame and regret my heart was feeling, God was still standing there saying, it's okay. I love you. I've always loved you, and I've been waiting for you.
Wow. Come on, Emily.
I began to think to myself that maybe if I had just obeyed the first time, I wouldn't have been betrayed or abandoned because God is always faithful.
Yeah.
Come on.
I wouldn't have been heartbroken because God's love is eternal. Obedience was and still is the protection I've always yearned for.
Come on.
And that's what the cross means
Wow.
to me.
Wow. Yes, Tucker!